What happens when two visions for the future collide? Magneto, the master of magnetism, resurrected to reclaim his throne, faces Astrid, a bold leader carrying the torch of hope and unity. Is peace truly possible, or is Magneto's brutal pragmatism the only way forward? In this epic showdown, ideals clash, powers collide, and the fate of mutant kind hangs in the balance. Welcome to Myths and Mythologies, your home for unraveling the legendary tales and timeless clashes that define worlds beyond imagination. Here, we explore the stories that resonate across generations, heroes, villains, and everything in between. Dive into the extraordinary as we bring mythos to life, one epic story at a time. Subscribe and join the journey. A faint hum echoed in the void, a sound that seemed to resonate not in the air, but in the marrow of his very being. Magneto's consciousness flickered back into existence, tethered by fragments of memory, the unyielding weight of his helm, the sharp cry of war, and then, nothingness. His eyes snapped open, met not by the chaos of battlefields but by the sterile glow of a metallic chamber. The walls pulsed faintly, their silver surfaces alive with veins of green light that coursed like bloodstreams. Encased in a pod of translucent alloy, he could feel the air on his face but sensed no power stirring within him, not even the pull of the Earth's magnetic currents. "Welcome back, Eric Lencher," a calm voice intoned. The speaker stepped forward, their silhouette cutting against the ambient glow. A woman clad in a flowing, silver-etched robe regarded him with quiet intensity. Her raven-black hair shimmered with faint bioluminescence, and her eyes, two orbs of molten gold, seemed to pierce through his soul. "Where am I?" Magneto demanded, his voice rasping. "You are among your own," the woman replied. "I am Callista, leader of Eden Rebirth. We have brought you back to life because the world needs you once again." Magneto's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his sharp features. "The world does not need me. It never has. Tell me, Callista, what game are you playing?" Callista allowed a faint smile to cross her lips. "You'll see for yourself soon enough." She gestured, and the pod released a hiss as it opened. Magneto stumbled forward, his legs weak from disuse but his mind sharper than ever. As he steadied himself, Magneto became acutely aware of the power vacuum within him. The sensation was foreign, disorienting. He clenched his fists, willing the metal floor to rise beneath his feet, but there was no response. "Your powers are still dormant," Callista explained. "A side effect of the resurrection process. They will return in time." Magneto took a moment to steady himself, his breath shallow as he absorbed the environment. His body was leaner, almost unfamiliar, a vessel restored yet unwhole. The sensation of disconnection from his powers gnawed at him, like an amputated limb still aching for use. "Why me?" Magneto finally asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "If this world has changed, as you suggest, why awaken the man who nearly tore it apart?" Callista's expression softened, but her tone remained resolute. "Because this world was built on your shadow. The peace we have is fragile, and there are cracks forming. Your enemies rise again, Eric, but more than that, your legacy is being challenged. We need a figurehead, a leader." Magneto straightened, his steel-gray eyes locking onto hers. "I was no leader. I was a warrior. And where warriors tread, peace crumbles." Callista led Magneto out of the chamber, down corridors that hummed with a technological elegance he didn't recognize. The facility seemed alive, every surface shifting subtly as though reacting to their presence. Through translucent walls, Magneto caught glimpses of other mutants training, their abilities ranging from pyrotechnics to ethereal projections. As they stepped into an open atrium, the full scale of their location became apparent. They stood atop a sprawling metallic plateau suspended high above the clouds. Below, the earth was a patchwork of vibrant green landscapes and glittering cities, a vision of renewal. Yet, even at this distance, Magneto could discern scars on the surface, faint trails of destruction that had yet to heal completely. "Welcome to Harmonia," Callista announced. "The first city governed by mutants and humans together, a utopia born from compromise." Magneto's lips curled into a smirk. "Utopia. A word so often spoken and so rarely earned. And what is this compromise you speak of?" Callista hesitated. "It is peace, maintained by a treaty known as the Mutant Reconciliation Pact. Mutants have autonomy but are bound by laws ensuring equal coexistence with humans. Violent resistance is forbidden." Magneto stopped abruptly. "Forbidden." His voice was low but carried the weight of thunder. "You would chain our people to laws made by those who sought to destroy us?" "These laws were agreed upon by mutant leaders," Callista countered. "By Storm, Jean Grey, and others who believe survival requires collaboration, not domination." The mention of his former allies stirred something deep within Magneto, a mix of anger and bitter nostalgia. He knew the price of compromise, and it had never been light. "You resurrected the wrong man," Magneto said. I do not fight for survival. I fight for superiority. That is the only way mutants will ever be free. Meanwhile, in the vibrant heart of Aurora Heights, a massive crowd gathered in the plaza. Astrid, the young leader of the Neo-Purifiers, stood on a raised platform, her presence magnetic and commanding. Her short platinum hair glimmered under the sunlight, and her eyes, sharp and emerald, surveyed the crowd with a calm confidence. My friends, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly. Today, we stand at the crossroads of our future. For too long, mutants have allowed themselves to be defined by the shadows of our past, by the actions of those who believed violence was the only answer. The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement while others remained skeptical. Astrid continued, her tone unwavering. Eric Lenscher, Magneto, believed in separation. He believed the only way to protect mutants was through domination. But I say this, domination is not strength. Strength is in unity, in trust, in proving that we are not the monsters they feared. The murmurs grew louder, a mix of applause and dissent. One voice called out, and what happens when they betray that trust? Astrid's gaze hardened. Then we will rise, not as conquerors, but as an undeniable force of justice. We will show them that the future does not belong to Magneto's methods. It belongs to us. The crowd erupted into cheers, though a few remained silent, their loyalty to Magneto unshaken. The halls of the Harmonia assembly echoed with murmurs as representatives, human and mutant alike, gathered for a peace negotiation. The air was thick with tension, amplified by the presence of Magneto. Standing at the edge of the chamber, cloaked in an air of defiance, he studied the room with a piercing gaze. Across the hall, Astrid entered, her steps purposeful and her posture regal. The murmur crescendoed into a dull roar as the two figures locked eyes. It was a moment charged with the weight of history and the sharp promise of conflict. The assembly quieted, all attention drawn to the clash of ideologies that was about to unfold. Astrid was the first to speak. So, the legend returns. Her voice carried a hint of mockery. But tell me, Magneto, what purpose does a relic serve in a world that has moved beyond him? Magneto stepped forward, his voice steady and laced with disdain. Moved beyond me? Your world is a house of cards, child, built on compromise and cowardice. It will collapse the moment a strong wind blows. Astrid smirked but didn't waver. And you would be that wind? You speak of strength, yet all you've left in your wake is destruction. Strength is in rebuilding, in creating a future where our children don't have to fight your wars. The assembly stirred, whispers of agreement and dissent rippling through the crowd. Magneto turned his attention to them, his voice rising. And what future is that? One where mutants grovel for scraps at the tables of those who once sought to annihilate them? Your peace is an illusion, a leash disguised as freedom. Astrid took a step closer, her emerald eyes blazing. Freedom isn't achieved by crushing others beneath your heel. It's earned by proving we're better than the hatred they fear. That's the lesson you never learned? Magneto's expression darkened. You speak of lessons as though you've lived long enough to understand them. Tell me, Astrid, what will you do when the humans betray this so-called trust? Will you lecture them to death? Or will you finally realize that strength, true strength, requires power? The room grew silent as Astrid's reply came, calm but cutting. Power is meaningless without purpose. And purpose is something you've lost, Magneto. That's why you no longer lead, and I will ensure you never do. As Astrid turned to address the assembly, Magneto took a subtle step forward. The lights in the chamber flickered as he instinctively reached for the metal surrounding him. But his power faltered, the connection slipping through his grasp. It was then that Astrid raised her hand, revealing a shimmering artifact, the Lament Orb, hovering above her palm. You feel it, don't you? She said, her voice resonating with authority. This artifact neutralizes mutant powers within its radius. A symbol of equality, a promise that no one will wield power unchecked, not even you. Magneto's eyes narrowed, his fists clenched. Equality is the refuge of the weak. Astrid stepped closer, the orb glowing faintly between them. Equality is the foundation of strength. But you'll never understand that. You're too blinded by your need for control. For a moment, the two stood mere feet apart, the air between them electric. The assembly held its breath, awaiting the inevitable explosion. The Grand Chamber of the United Earth Federation was a testament to the delicate peace between mutants and humans. Towering pillars of steel and glass reached toward a skylight, allowing sunlight to cascade onto the circular assembly floor. Delegates from across the globe, human and mutant alike, had gathered to solidify the Mutant Reconciliation Pact. Tension hung heavy in the air, heightened by the presence of Magneto and Astrid, who stood on opposite sides of the room. Magneto, clad in a black and crimson cloak that seemed to radiate authority despite his diminished powers, surveyed the gathering with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. Astrid, resplendent in her silver and emerald attire, addressed the assembly, her voice calm yet firm. We stand on the precipice of a new era, Astrid began, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. An era where cooperation replaces conflict and trust outweighs fear. The Lament Orb, she said, holding up the artifact for all to see, is a symbol of that trust. A safeguard against the misuse of power, whether human or mutant. Magneto scoffed audibly, drawing murmurs from the delegates. You speak of trust, he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade, yet you hold an artifact that suppresses the very essence of who we are. That is not trust, it is control. Astrid turned to face him, her expression unyielding. Control? No, Magneto. This is accountability. Power without accountability is tyranny, and tyranny is the legacy you've left us to overcome. Before Magneto could retort, the chamber doors burst open. A group of masked intruders stormed in, weapons blazing. Chaos erupted as delegates scrambled for cover. Astrid immediately took charge, her hands glowing with anti-magnetic energy that shielded the assembly from the first volley of attacks. Magneto, still without access to his powers, moved with the precision of a veteran warrior. He disarmed one attacker with a swift blow to the head and used a broken weapon as an improvised staff to fend off another. Despite his weakened state, his presence on the battlefield was undeniable, a reminder of the legend he once was. Astrid, meanwhile, displayed her prowess in combat, weaving through the attackers with agility and precision. Her mastery of energy manipulation allowed her to deflect projectiles and incapacitate foes with stunning bursts of light. Their paths converged as they fought side by side, their unspoken truce born of necessity. Still think strength is just about power? Astrid quipped as she deflected a grenade with a burst of energy. Strength is about survival, Magneto replied, his tone sharp. And you're only surviving because of me? Together, they subdued the attackers, but the damage was done. Several delegates were injured, and the chamber was in ruins. The leader of the intruders, a human extremist, sneered at them as he was restrained. This is just the beginning, he spat. You mutants think you can rule us? We'll never bow to you. As the intruders were escorted out, the room fell silent, save for the hum of the Lament Orb. Magneto turned to Astrid, his eyes burning with defiance. Do you see now? He demanded. They will never accept us. Your vision of peace is a lie. Astrid stepped forward, her hand tightening around the orb. And what would you do, Magneto? Turn this chamber into a battlefield? Prove them right by becoming the monster they fear. Magneto's voice rose, echoing through the room. If fear is what it takes to ensure our survival, then so be it. I would rather be a monster than a slave. Astrid raised the orb, its glow intensifying. Then you leave me no choice. The artifact pulsed, creating a shockwave that sent Magneto staggering. His connection to the room's metal dissolved entirely, leaving him vulnerable. But Magneto's determination burned brighter. You may strip me of my powers, he said, advancing despite the orb's influence. But you will never strip me of my conviction. That is something you cannot control. Their battle was not just of strength but of ideologies, each attack laced with words that cut deeper than any blow. Astrid fought to uphold a vision of unity, while Magneto defended the belief that only dominance could secure mutantkin's survival. The chamber was in ruins. The once grand space was littered with debris, scorch marks on the walls, and overturned furniture. Delegates had evacuated, leaving only Magneto and Astrid standing amidst the wreckage. Both were battered, their clothes torn and faces streaked with sweat and determination. Astrid, holding the Lament Orb, glared at Magneto as energy pulsed faintly around her. This ends now, she said, her voice hoarse but resolute. You've proven nothing except that your way only leads to destruction. Magneto, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, straightened his posture. Despite his weakened state, his presence was still imposing. You think your ideals make you superior? You're blind, Astrid. Blind to the truth that peace is a fleeting mirage when built on the promises of those who fear us. Astrid's grip tightened on the orb, her voice trembling with frustration. It's not about fear, it's about hope. The future I'm fighting for isn't perfect, but it's better than the endless cycle of war you've condemned us to. Magneto took a step forward, unflinching in the face of her power. Hope is a luxury we cannot afford. The only way mutants will ever thrive is by seizing control, by ensuring that no one, not humans, not even other mutants, can threaten our survival. The Lament Orb flared, a warning of Astrid's restrained fury. If control is all you understand, then you've already lost. Leadership is about inspiring others to follow, not forcing them to kneel. Magneto paused, his expression softening for the first time. Inspiration, you say? Tell me, Astrid, how many mutants have been inspired by your vision? How many would die for it as they died for mine? Astrid's resolve faltered for a moment, her expression clouded with uncertainty. But she steadied herself and replied, I don't want them to die for my vision. I want them to live for it. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging between them. For the first time, Magneto looked at her not as an adversary but as something else, a reflection of his younger self, filled with ideals untainted by the harshness of reality. "You remind me of Charles," Magneto said softly, his voice devoid of mockery. "Always believing in the goodness of people, even when they give you every reason not to. Perhaps you'll succeed where he failed. Or perhaps you'll break, as I did." Astrid lowered the orb slightly, sensing a shift in his demeanor. "You don't have to be this, Eric. You've been given a second chance. Use it to build something, not destroy it." Magneto turned, gazing out at the shattered chamber. "Maybe you're right," he said, almost to himself. "But know this, your path will be harder than mine ever was. Idealism is the sharpest blade, and it cuts both ways." Magneto left the chamber, his figure silhouetted against the dawn breaking over the horizon. Astrid watched him go, the Lament Orb dimming in her hand. She had won the battle but felt the weight of the war ahead, a war not of fists or powers, but of hearts and minds. As the delegates began to return, Astrid addressed them with renewed determination. "This is not the end. It is only the beginning. We will prove that unity is not a weakness, but our greatest strength." Outside, Magneto walked into the rising sun, a storm brewing within him. He was not defeated, but he was changed. His methods, his vision, these would be tested in ways he had never imagined. For now, though, he would watch. He would see if Astrid's idealistic flame could withstand the winds of reality. And if it faltered, he would be there, not as a savior, but as the storm.